This is Dennis Raimondi with the Coffee League, found at thecoffeeleague.com. My guest today, Andrea Allen. She's quite a force in the world of specialty coffee. She's uh, been in a number of competitions. She was the first runner-up in the U.S. Barista Championship in 2016. She's the co-owner of ONYX Coffee Lab with 4 cafes and a roastery. And she is mom to River Gray, a black coffee-loving toddler. Yeah, I had to throw that in there. Andrea, thank you so very much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be on your show and just have the opportunity to talk about something we all love, which
Yeah.
is coffee.
I have to ask before we get into anything else, how did you get into coffee?
Wow, that's a great question. So when I graduated from high school, I was 18 years old, and I loved going to our local shop here in Arkansas, and I decided that would be something fun that I could do and make money while I was going to college. And so I started off in a cafe, just working like Friday and Saturday nights, serving coffee to people, and I fell in love with it, and I've stayed since then. That was a while ago. So
Gone ever since. There's many areas that we could talk about, but one of the things that we chatted a little bit before we came on the air, one of the areas you mentioned that you had a specific interest in now in how coffee is sourced. Tell us a little bit about that, and also what specialty companies are paying for green coffee. So that whole area of sourcing the coffee, because I think that's an area that most people who are consumers are least familiar with. So, and I think they would be curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, I know most about how we do it here, and so we're really self-taught in the area of green buying. My husband John is our head green buyer, and one of the things that's so tricky about sourcing coffee is there's not a lot of information out there about what people are doing, how they're doing it, what people pay, what people should pay, what they shouldn't pay, and so. So how we do it is we have about 70% of our coffee that we roast and sell as what we call relationship coffee. And we just made that term up to basically represent a situation where John has visited the farm and contracted the coffee directly from the producer. That's one of the things that makes consumers really confused is there's lots of certifications and seals and things. And I think people want to feel good about what they're buying and what they're drinking, but it's hard to know just because it has a stamp or a certification on it, what does that actually mean and what does that actually mean at the beginning of the supply chain. And that's definitely something we've been frustrated with in the past. We get a lot of customers asking for something like fair trade or something like organic. They want to know it is being fairly approached. But most people don't know what specifically fair trade, what that even means. And that usually basically just means that a coffee was purchased for just a slight amount above whatever the commodity coffee price was, which is really very low. And so, one of the things that we did, actually it's been a year now, but we basically decided to just go ahead and open up our sources and our information and our books to the specialty industry. And so what we're doing is on our website, we're publishing what we paid for the coffee, who we bought it from, what the fair trade price was at the time of purchase, and what the commodity coffee price was at the time of purchase. And so kind of our goal is just to show customers and show the specialty industry, exactly what we're doing. We list everyone that we work with. So we've definitely had some scenarios where we've gotten outbid for coffees that we've bought in the past, potentially because people are looking at our website and going and buying coffee from our sources. And while that kind of can be challenging sometimes, it's really exciting for us because it just means it's elevating the industry as a whole.
So you have full transparency then.
Yeah, we have full transparency. And so kind of what we know from traveling with other people, from talking with other green buyers and importers and exporters, is that most people are in specialty are not paying a lot for green coffee, and that's something that we would really like to see change.
Yeah, that's a question I have for you, and that is obviously the consumer wants to pay the lowest price, but the farmer needs to make a living, so the general consensus that I think believe is out there is that the coffees the farmers aren't getting enough money, but that'll bring the price up. So where do you see that going, and how do you think the consumer will react to or handle that?
That's a good question, and I will give my opinion. I don't have a full answer for that. Something we're still also thinking about. I do think that people are in the U.S. are in a great place to recognize quality for sure. I mean, our industry itself has been helped tremendously by the huge craft beer movement. You know,
Right.
people know the difference between a craft beer and a mass-made beer. People know the difference between craft chocolate and something that you can buy at every grocery store. So that has helped us a lot in the customer's mind. And I think that being able to show the customer the difference in the quality is extremely important. And I think where it starts to get tricky is that there are coffee companies out there that are, you know, selling high-priced coffee that maybe they did not pay much for. And so that's where it gets tricky is, you know, depending on how they're marketing it, how they're packaging it, you know, they can price it at whatever people will buy it for. And so that's, I think, where it gets confusing for the customers. Like, what is quality, and how do you know it when you see it? And honestly, taste in every arena is completely subjective. So, you know, someone could really love something that's not super high quality, and that's, I think, normal and standard for all of us. We've all got those things we're really into. But I think so far, what we've seen, our coffee is in the higher range. And when we were publishing our data, we were a little worried because, you know, when we say we pay $4 or $5, $6 or up dollars for green coffee, that's quite a bit. The commodity price, I checked it a few days ago, it's at $1.17. So it's significantly above that. However, if you're a customer or a consumer and you look and you think, oh, well, the raw product only costs $5, but my retail bag costs $21, that's ridiculous. You know, we were a little worried about putting it out there because we didn't know for sure if the customers would understand. You know, there's a lot of other things involved in terms of packaging and labor. There's roasting. There's all kinds of things involved in it. But what we've seen is that customers seem to understand that higher quality products, higher quality coffees cost more. And so I've seen that play out in, you know, we have customers that buy a retail bag of coffee from us every week. We have customers that buy one every 6 months. And, you know, sometimes we're probably pricing ourselves out of more regular business, but I feel like that for where the market that we're in and what we're trying to do, that is part of it. And we appreciate both of those customers equally and want to provide really fabulous coffee regardless of how often you're buying it from us.
Yeah,
So.
it's Andrea, it seems to me from what you're saying that a big part of this is the education and sophistication of the consumer. For instance, in wine, there was a time when everybody drank cheap table wine, and then people started going, hey, let's like single origin. Where is this grape from? How was it grown? You know, blah, blah. And, you know, so if you want that, and as the palate becomes more refined and one makes the differentiations, one obviously will pay more money for that product. And I think that will happen in coffee. Do you spend any time, or is there anybody in the coffee industry that spends a lot of time actually educating consumers? I know some cafes have classes, they offer different things like that to get people more sophisticated and knowledgeable in their understanding of coffee and the coffee industry. And do you see that happening at all in coffee now?
I do see that happening more, and I think it's very important. One of the things that we did, we started, ONYX began in 2012, so we're about 6 years old, and one of the things we did in the very beginning was we had open cuppings that were free for anyone who wanted to show up every Saturday, and my husband John hosted those, and it was a no pressure, come try our coffee, you can leave at any time, and just discussing with customers, like, why does this coffee taste this way? Why does it taste different than the next one? How do we find this coffee? Where does it come from? And so we found that those were extremely helpful in our area in kind of educating people about the difference between buying a retail bag or a latte or whatever you're getting at a specialty shop versus buying a bag of coffee in the grocery store, and what is the difference there? And so and I see other people doing things like that, hosting classes and things like that, and I feel like there's definitely some strides being made, but there's also a lot of room for that to improve, and I think that there's that's a real need, and that's something we spend a lot of time writing people back from questions on our website of all kinds of things, from what is this processing method, how do I make this coffee, or even, hey, I bought this coffee, I heard you guys are great, it doesn't taste good at my house, what's wrong? We do a lot of like person-to-person discussion with people about it. And then in our cafes here in Arkansas, we spend a ton of time training our staff to be able to answer questions as simple as, as simple and complex, I should say, as which coffee should I buy, all the way up to, hey, I'm looking for a lactic processed geisha from Colombia. When will you have that? So we do a lot of one-on-one education, and I'm hoping to see more and more of that happen throughout the industry.
Fascinating. Andrea, I wanted to talk to you about your coffee competition, being a competitor. You were first runner-up in the U.S. Barista Championship in 2016. And for people that aren't familiar with these competitions, that's a enormous accomplishment. There are a lot of people that are going for it. And how did you find the time to even train for that? And then what was that competition like? And I must say, I've read that there are things about coffee competition, barista competition you like, and things you don't like. So maybe you could reflect on that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for asking. I also placed second in 2017, so I'm the second runner-up 2 years in a row. And so, so I do quite a bit of training for competition. It's not something that you can just walk out and do really well in, because it has a specific format. There's tons of rules. There's things that, that are pretty... there's just things that are commonplace in a cafe that if you did that in a competition, you would lose a lot of points. There's all kinds of stuff. And so, I'm lucky in that because I'm the owner of our company, I can carve out time during my work life. And then my husband also works in coffee, so he carves out time to watch our daughter and help me a ton tremendously in his free time. On the weekends and in the evenings, so that I can adequately prepare for these things. I think this year there were, in the 2 qualifying competitions for the United States Barista competition, there were 120 competitors total, and 32 make it to the national level. So, it's definitely something everybody that's competing has practiced. Everybody that's competing has a coffee that is just very, very good, and so it's tough to put together a meaningful presentation and then execute it in front of a bunch of people and still have your coffee taste good and all of that. So yeah, as you mentioned, there's things I like about it and things I don't like about it. Things I like about it are that it is a platform for for baristas and other coffee professionals to really address the industry as a whole. The United States Barista Competition is, in my opinion, but I think in others' opinion as well, the most difficult competition in the world circuit. We have the most competitors. We have our competitors consistently make the finals of the World Barista Competition, which is also no easy feat. And so we're not only being listened to by the United States barista and coffee professional community, but also by the world community. And so it's really a great place to voice concerns about issues, to challenge the industry, to share stories about producers and coffees and things that are happening. And that competition really does reward innovation in coffee preparation, and also innovation in thought, innovation in social issues. And so that's the thing I love the most about it. That and just the community that has been created around it.
Right.
Many competitors that I've competed alongside the last several years have become real friends, and that's something that's really cool. I don't know how often I would share a prep table with someone from New York City,
Right. Hey, Andrea, I was going to ask you.
Never.
Yeah.
So,
are you entering the competition this year?
I am, yes, and actually,
My money would be on you.
And
I want to ask you. One of the issues that sometimes comes up, I've heard from other people, is in the final, women have not been as represented as they should be in a lot of these competitions, especially in the finals and all. And do you see that happening? Do you see that changing? And obviously, you are a leader in regard to that.
Yeah, thank you. That is something I would love to see change, and something I get asked about a lot. And I wish I knew what. Just from the very beginning of the competition, you see many less females competing. Period. So there's, I don't know the statistics from this year, but it's typically about, I'll just say 30% women, 70% men. And then there's also an even smaller number of that of minority competitors and other kinds of competitors as well. And so I think generally that women specifically are just underrepresented in general. So I think that the women in the competition are being successful in the same kinds of percentages that they are competing, but I think it's that entry point. Women are perhaps don't have the same kinds of opportunities within coffee companies to be able to compete. You definitely have to have, in my opinion, not everyone does, but I think you definitely have to have the support of your company or someone to help you be able to execute something as difficult as it is. And so I see less women being given that opportunity. And then even as you go backwards in the cafes themselves, I see less women working in coffee in general. And so I don't really know why that is. Something I think about quite a bit.
Yeah.
I do think that as women get older and develop family lives or develop other passions, that it often, particularly in my situation, I'm a woman with a family, there's a lot of responsibilities that tend traditionally to fall to women. And so I think that, showing up at a cafe at 6 a.m. is not always super conducive when you have a baby, for example.
Right.
And so, I don't know if it's probably all of those things combined, plus many more that I'm ignorant of. But I would really love to see more women, more minority competitors, just more representation in general, because the coffee industry is extremely diverse, and I feel like for whatever reason that's not being represented as well.
Well, I think you're certainly a trailblazer in helping with that, and you're winning. We'll be rooting for you this year because I think that'll have a big impact. And I just did a road trip with my wife, and from the Midwest down through Florida up to New Orleans, Nashville, and from my Instagram, especially taking a lot of photos in cafes and all, doing a lot of interviews, meeting a lot of people, and I've noticed more and more women baristas, more, and I try to reflect that in my interviews, in my Instagram, and showing that. And I specifically recently I interviewed Erica Levani out of New York City, who had
Oh, yes.
a big conference
Yeah.
for women and minorities, people that are often excluded from coffee culture. And
Mhm.
she was fantastic. That's posted up. And I just had Michaela Gervard from Coffee Collective
Mhm.
in Denmark, in Copenhagen on,
Yes.
and she was just in Australia and for a big conference on women in coffee, and at least one of those women that was at the conference from Australia will be I'll be interviewing soon, and I know that
Well,
Steve Maloney, a mutual friend of ours, is with the Barista League, is working on that as well. So I think what I'll try to do is put a spotlight on that, and I think that it's something that will change. And because stereotypical barista for a lot of people is the guy with multiple tattoos on the arm and like with the beard and but I think more and more now
mhm.
people are coming in and seeing and many of the great baristas of the world, the women. We had Joanna Amon from Drop Coffee. She's a
Mhm.
competitive roaster and has a tremendous company out of Stockholm. So yeah, so we'll try to focus on that. But great work, and yeah, we'll definitely be rooting for you. And how much do you take a lot of time to prepare for that? It's coming up soon, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's in 3 weeks, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm prepping for it a lot. I've spent the last 7 weekends up at our roastery, practicing in coffees, working on my conceptual stuff for the presentation, and really between now and then, I'm going to be spending at least 50% of my work time
Uh-huh.
preparing. And yeah, and it's really actually a very fun thing for me because it's a joint effort between my husband and I. He's as passionate or more passionate than I am about coffee, and so we have a lot of fun and sometimes a lot of disagreements about what what we think will do well and where we want the coffees and the conceptual stuff we want to present. And so it's really a fun collaboration between him and I. And I'm the one that ends up standing at the machine in the competition, but he really is as instrumental as anyone else in
Right.
any accomplishment that I have.
What do you like least about competitions?
I think the thing that I like least about it is that it tends to, in my opinion, it tends to highlight very specific and very high end portions of the coffee industry. I feel like that all of the coffees that are being brought to the stage are, including my own, are the absolute best coffees that are produced in that season, and that is such a small percentage of what is actually being produced. And so I feel like that the representation of at the coffee competitions, the both the subject matter that tends to lend itself to, and also just the the way that coffee competition is perceived in terms of coffee quality is not representative of the industry as a whole. And so, although in most fields there are leaders at the top, or whatever, and those kinds of things filter down, I certainly agree with that. But I would like to see thematically the coffee industry as a whole being more reflected on the national stage. And then, I think that's really my main frustration. I'm both a rule person and not a rule person at the same time. So there's like the constraints of the competition itself tend to be frustrating to me, and I think that's just more of a personality thing than it is the actual competition itself. But often my first couple of drafts of my scripts are 30-minute scripts, and the competition itself is 15 minutes, and that includes all the drink preparation as well. So every year I find myself being frustrated because I'm having to cut what I feel like is very relevant and important content to what I'm speaking to from those. And so I sometimes want the platform to be a little different, but that's also the beauty of it. You have to work within the confines you've been given. And so yeah, that's another thing that I get frustrated about. But yeah.
And then finally, I wanted to ask you about where would you like to see ONYX head in the next few years, next 5 years? What are your long-term goals with the company?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, I would. I don't know. We have so many things we would love to do and we would love to see. We're currently working on opening a new roastery space, which is going to happen this coming summer. So we're extremely excited about that. We have a couple of new cafes that we are thinking about opening, and that's really exciting. But I think beyond that, we want to continue to provide jobs to our staff members, more salary positions, higher salaries for people that we currently have. It's been my passion and dream for a long time for coffee to be more and more of a career and for people. And I've always wanted to be able to provide real jobs for people that I really care about that work with us. And so I want to see that growing within our own company. And then I also just want to see where we go with our sourcing and with our relationships with producers. Where I feel like every year our quality of green coffee we're getting in, I feel like, oh man, this is the best year ever. We can't get any better than this. And then the following year we end up with coffees that I feel like taste better and perform better than the year before. And so I'm interested to see how that side of our business continues to grow, and want to help or collaborate with other roasters and other coffee companies that want to become transparent, want to, pay more where more is due for coffee. And so I'm interested to see how that side of our business grows as well.
Great. Well, you certainly have the passion. You're doing some great work. ONYXCoffeeLab.com, ONYXCO, ONYXCoffeeLab.com, and we'll post all that up. You have 4 great cafes and probably more on the way. And I wish you great success. And I hope that I may make it out to the competition this year. And but
That'd be great.
We'll be pulling for you. And thank you again for taking the time to come on with us, and I hope to have you back on sometime.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you thinking of us. I know we're in Arkansas, and that's not a super hot spot for coffee. So anytime we get noticed for something, I just feel grateful and really excited. So thank you so much.
At some point in the future, when people think of Arkansas, they may think of coffee and ONYX. So there you go.
I hope so.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.